Hello. This is a video about making a place for green beans to grow. And this is my tried and true method for helping these wonderful legumes climb towards the sky. And it all starts with soil, so you've got to get really good soil. Luckily, I've been doing this for years, so I'm starting with good soil. So first step, make good ground, rich soil, and then you have to provide a structure for the beans. Now I've already done this with these metal T-posts that I've spaced at about 7 feet apart. If you don't know what a metal T-post is, it looks like this, and you can get them anywhere. I like the used weathered ones. Sometimes you got to make your own used weathered ones, and you stick them in the ground, you know, like that. And then you call a friend who's got a post pounder, or you get a big ladder and hit it with a hammer. But you want to make sure that they're really straight, stable, with, you know, space to grow your things. So you basically put this on top, do that until it's stable. And this is a good tool that helps, but you know, not everybody needs one. For the one time a year when you pound posts. And now we're gonna run the magical trellis net. And this is when I decided to film this, because really it's just create good soil, get these posts in the ground, and then this lightweight trellis netting is just probably the best product in farming. Very lightweight, very strong. It doesn't obscure the bean very much. Of course, the beans will. Now, zip ties. If you don't know what a zip tie is, you can Google it. You want to get ones that are rated for outdoors, and also ones that can hold at least a little bit of weight. Each one of these zip ties, I think, holds like 70 pounds. But look, magical trellis net, transforming a space, creating a vegetated wall. And the beans will literally grow up this sometimes. Well, always. They'll grow up it, and sometimes, if the soil is really well, they'll grow up it and then down it and then up again. So, it's time for the next zip tie. And I tend to start with the top. I try to get really good tension as high up as I can. And you don't want to plant green beans until, they say, after Memorial Day here in the Finger Lakes. You can throw them in early, but the beans will only germinate when the ground is the right temperature. And then I did finish this for aesthetic reasons with this nice cedar post, because cedar is such a beautiful wood. So this would be the final part of the trellis, reaching the end. And I might hold off on this. And really, it's always just observing what's going on and seeing if it, you know, if it meets your standards. I like to tension one side and then work my way out so that I use the most of the trellis and also get it nice and taut. So that's kind of what you're watching me do now, is really just taking my time to get the structure well fitted together. scatter your zip ties on the ground or put them in your pocket. Just so that when you've got the tension, you've got a zip tie ready to kind of help with the cast. I try to kind of get them level, but it's always never easy. There's a million ways to do this. This is probably the first video about beam support that I'll share. And this is really just about getting it in with readily available materials. And, you know, I like to see how early I can get a harvest of beans. So every year I play with trying to, you know, just be on top of the weather, really give the beans the best chance to sprout and really enjoy where they live. I never hesitate to use too many zip ties. You never have too much, never overbuild it. I once did this with like 500 row feet on this farm just because I was going crazy and I thought beans would be a good, you know, thing to focus on that summer. And this is just about 20 feet and you can see the trellis net is up and I'm about to put the last zip tie on this funky cedar post. So I've really tried to tension the top of this whole thing as much as possible. And now I'm gonna play with this final one here. You know, does it work to kind of pull its height up just a little bit, or really just keep it in the same line? And I think it's probably better to keep it right in the same line, really getting a nice tension over here. If my zip tie is long enough, which it may not be. It's about 1 millimeter away from being long enough. So, if you're ever in a scenario where you say, oh my gosh, my zip tie isn't long enough, you can take 2 zip ties together and make a longer zip tie. Make sure you tension them both. Nice and tight. And that's another reason why staying less fancy in terms of using a cedar post versus just a regular metal post. You know, it does create more work, but I kind of think a nicer aesthetic in a way. And I won't cut it until I know I've really tensioned it as much as I want to. It's going to be holding, you know, hundreds of pounds of beans and bean-related parts, you know? And it's going to get hit by the wind. It's going to kind of be a big sail in a way. So before I go up, I'm going to make a couple double zip ties, knowing that that's what I'm going to need. And they're right in my pocket, so I don't have to go searching around for where are the zip ties, because they're right here. It's taken me 41 years to get this organized with life and also this process of putting beans in. So I'm going to try and do about 100 row feet of beans. So this is just the first 20. And it's exciting. The first 20 maybe is the most exciting. And lest we forget what we're talking about beans. But also, we could be talking about not letting the sage burn the shower curtain. We could be talking about, you know, growing tomatoes on this, or cucumbers, or cucamelons, or really any vining plant. Really like this sort of a system. Alright, so we go behind this. Well, I can't see as well, but just trying to catch part of this trellis that I can really pull over. Now, I just got poked. I just got poked by a little section of my funky cedar log, which means it would also have cut someone's hand, right, if it was reaching in to pick. I'm just going to slice this off with my pole saw. And that's a bad finish to the cut, but it's okay. And this is $10 Harbor Freight. You know, you cut on the pole. It's really nice. So, time to tension. Little by little. I'll come back down just to make sure it's still tight down here. Really, once you get the whole thing tensioned, you know, it wants to stay in place. So I'll find my double ones that I left on the ground. Now I'm going to catch this bottom line here and just get it nicely pulled over. And this actually is going to require the triple zip tie, which I'm sure some would say isn't good enough. But I build from the perspective of a gardener where, you know, I think that's gardeners thinking is just keep combining zip ties together possibly. I even have some nice little cedar hooks here. And it's pretty strong. Now the last piece will be, in terms of building the trellis, will be cutting our ends, kind of seeing how much we need, there's the extra. You know, this can really, if you rush this, you'll wish you hadn't. So always give yourself a little wiggle room. Like for when I got right here, and I see that I really want to pull this way a little bit. Probably going to be a triple zip, which is, you know, what happens when you use funky wood. Just going to use that to pull and tension the trellis this way. Really, once it starts to get taut, it wants to stay taut. I'll throw another one on the end here, because we're really getting to the best part, which is putting the beans in the ground. And you only want to do it once you've got support ready. Usually I do this before I have the support ready, and that I'm really rushing to build it around the already growing beans. And you know, it's can be a little precarious, honestly. So you don't want to hurt these fragile baby beans, but you also need to, you know, it's like having a baby before you've got a room to move them into, maybe. Which, you know, it's hard to use a chop saw around a child trying to sleep who just came home from the hospital. So I spend the time when I'm really eager to plant, really just getting my area ready to be planted in. And I know technically you don't want to start any real warm stuff until after Memorial Day weekend, which is this weekend. And I bet if we measured the soil, it's not 70 degrees. And that's really your parameter. So, you see now, green bean trellis, 20 feet, and it's time to plant green beans. But first, really make sure your bed is well prepared. So I'm scanning right now for a rake. And I have a rake. It's right here. So I'll walk down this row and just smooth it out a little bit. Pull more soil into areas where I don't need as much. We're going to extend the bed a little bit here too. This is a hard rake, or a steel rake, they're called. It's a nice way for conveying material. I'm really going for something of a little trench, just so that the beans can catch a little bit of water. And then I'm happy with it. So what I'll do now is locate the beans, which are here in this bowl where they've been sitting on an altar of sorts since last year, or potentially they're like 3 years old. I don't know. I've been growing the same beans called rattlesnake beans. They're green with purple stripes, and they're my favorite. Kids love them. Sweet, nutty. So I'm gonna plant about this deep on my finger, and I'm gonna go about 6 inches apart. Usually I plant too close and they get too much bean and not enough space. So I'm gonna give them space this year to reach their full potential. And I do, I'll admit, when I'm going through these, find some beans that are cracked. You really don't want to plant those. And some are prettier than others. So I don't know if there's a correlation between planting the pretty beans and the quality of the green beans, or if it's age. You know, I know they're all magic. So I just put them in the ground. And it's my favorite thing. Now, I already have this trench dug, so I can just set them in the trench, and I'm gonna backfill soil over it, and maybe even give them a nicer little seed bed to emerge into. And I just find it easier to plant into a trench sometimes than to poke holes. As long as the seeds get into the ground, really, that's all you could really ask for. Also, once they're up, you know, for animals to not eat them, but you just plant the seed and you pray that it can reach its potential, like a human, I suppose. And it's really, really nice to plant when you know you've created a good environment for the plant to grow. There's no rushing to make things right later on, once it's already up. Just one seed at a time. If you plant too many, it's fine, because you could always thin them out. It's really meditative. Gardening is really like one of my favorite forms of finding joy, staying connected to life. And then when I come back through, I'll just push the soil from the sides on the plants. It can also weigh down the trellis a little bit. Careful to not spill the beans. I wonder where that phrase comes from. And we've gotten to the end. And we'll end, I guess, with the beginning, which is, make good soil. And I'm gonna make another video soon about how I create garden beds, which is never about building boxes to contain the soil, but rather to improve the existing soil from the ground up, bringing in good food for it so that the garden really can stay luscious. And we'll pan from this newly planted bean trellis, which maybe we'll revisit this year. And this is the backyard entrance to the house. So this trellis will lend a little bit of privacy to the experience. And now to plant potatoes.